Time to begin. Good to see everybody here this morning, and we got part of our family back, so it's good to be complete again. When part of your family's gone, you're just not complete. But glad to see them back. They got smiling faces, and I guess they all had a good time. Jeff looks a little sleepy, but I hope. What is it? Up a little more? Is that good? Better. Okay. Good to see everybody here this morning, and part of our family's back, as I was saying. And we haven't been advertising that we'll have an adult class in the auditorium, but we will. We'll have an adult class all 5 days of the Vacation Bible School. I want you to make note of all the work that's been done around here by Michelle and Deborah and Kenny's wife, Andrea, and many others to make this all possible. And Sister Michelle, I heard her say this was her last year to head this up, so we'll have to look out for another VBS coordinator for next year for decorations. Lila was also here, that's right. Lila was up here working, and several of the guys were up here doing what they could, but the women did the most decorating, I'll say that for sure. Now, if you haven't been around, you're going to have the opportunity to come in and hear one dynamic young teacher here Monday, so don't miss that. I think that Brother Danny Hyder is a very capable teacher, and I'm looking forward to hearing his first lesson on Monday morning. So my daughter came through her procedure without any problems, and she has a couple of stents put in. We've got she still has some infection, and she's going back this next week for a second procedure. So that'll maybe get done and put her back in shape. Brother, sister.
My son Sean has that parasite. It's a beef letter.
So Sean has some problems. Yeah, he's had that. Okay.
Yeah, he's very, very sick. So I said, go get him in Mississippi.
So he's in Mississippi?
No, he's back in Lebanon. He's lost his body.
Oh, okay. Well, we're glad he's back, and hope he gets to doing better. Will he undergo some procedure for that?
I don't know. He was going to urgent care when I talked to him this morning.
Okay. All right. Let's remember, that's Sean. Is Joseph doing all right? Yeah, okay. All right. Anything else? Yes.
Our son Andrew, I'd like to keep him in our
Yes,
prayers.
Andrew.
He's having some health problems.
He's having health problems, yes. I remembered that after I talked to Ron last night, after I hung up. So let's remember Andrew and Sean and my daughter Lori, and Betty can empathize with that because it's the same thing that Sister Betty went through. Anything else? Yeah. Oh, well, yeah, we've got a new addition to the family. In 4 weeks, we've had 2 new additions, so I guess that's a good thing. 2 great-grandchildren, and had a little boy and a little girl. The little girl's Clementine. She's the most recent one. She's doing well. Her mama's doing well, and her daddy's supposed to be back on American soil today. So, anything else? Would you like to lead some prayer, Brother James? Yeah. Here, wait just a minute. Wait.
To hear the word that's been to give us guidance and study for our Bible class this morning. And we ask this in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Brother James. Brother James also been having some health problems, and he's undergoing some tests and things for his limb, and maybe that'll get lined out real soon. All right, last week we talked about 39, and this week we're going to go into 40, and I'll read the first 4 verses here, and then we'll go back to chapter 37 and see if we can tie all this thing together. So in chapter 40 of Genesis, if you have your Bibles, open them up, chapter 40. And it came to pass after these things that the butler, the king of Egypt, and the baker had offended their lord, king of Egypt. And Pharaoh was wroth with 2 of his officers against the chief of the butlers, and against the chief of the bakers. And he put them in the ward in the house of the captain of the guard, into the prison, in the place where Joseph was bound. And the captain of the guard charged Joseph with them. He served them, and they continued a season in the ward. Now, what's going to happen here is they're going to have a couple of dreams. In fact, there's going to be 2 dreams. In fact, we might just read about the first one, because I want to make a point when we come down to 15. And the dream, and they, the butcher and the baker and the butler and the baker, I know they both started with B, butler and the baker, and they dreamed a dream, both of them each a dream in the night, each man according to the interpretation of his dream. And the butler and the baker of the king of Egypt were bound in the prison. And Joseph came to them in the morning and looked upon them, behold, they were sad. And he asked Pharaoh's officers that were with him in the ward, the Lord's house, saying, wherefore look you so sad, so sadly today? And they said unto him, we have dreamed a dream, and there is no interpreter of it. And Joseph said unto them, do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me them, and I pray you. And the chief butler told his dream to Joseph, and said, in my dream, behold, a vine was before me, and the vine was 3 branches, and it was though as it budded, and the blossoms shot forth, and the cluster thereof brought forth ripe grapes. And Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and I gave the cup to Pharaoh's hand. And Joseph said, and this is the interpretation of it. 3 branches are 3 days. And within 3 days shall Pharaoh lift up thine head, and restore unto thee the place that thou shalt deliver to Pharaoh's cup into his hand, after the former manner when thou wast his butler. But think on me, now here's what he said, but think on me when it shall be well with thee, and show kindness, I pray thee, unto me, and make mention of me unto Pharaoh, and bring me out of this place. So here we find that Joseph is going to interpret 2 dreams, and I won't read a second just now. We'll go back to 37. In chapter 37 of Genesis, here Joseph, a young man in his father's house, and the reason I want to go back here is so that you'll see how young he was. And here in 37, and Jacob dwelt in the land wherein his father was a stranger, in the land of Canaan, and there these are the generations of Jacob, Joseph being 17 years old, and feeding the flock with his brethren, and the sons of Bildad with the sons of Ziplah, the father's wives, and Joseph brought unto his father their evil report. In other words, he was telling them what they were doing and wasn't necessarily good. Now, Israel loved Joseph more than all the children, because he was a son of old age, and he made him a coat of many colors. So I won't go on to read all of that, but I want you to see that Joseph had 2 dreams, one of which he said that the sheaves of the field were bound, and they bowed down to him. And so he went out to his brethren, his brothers, and he told them this dream. And here's what they say, and his brethren said unto him, shalt thou indeed reign over us or shalt thou indeed have dominion over us? And they hated him yet more for his dreams and his words. Now, there's a lesson in this. If you got more than one child, if you got several children in your household, and you favor one more than the other, he's a favored child, you might have a little resentment from the rest of them. So it's probably not a good thing to have a favorite child. And so he dreamed again, and he dreamed that all the sun and the stars bowed down to him. And he told it to his father. And the dream, and his father rebuked him and said unto him, What is this dream that thou dreamest? Shall I, thy mother, and thy brethren indeed bow down to ourselves unto thee? And his brethren envied him, and his father observed that. So now let's go back to 39. So I want you to, 40. I want you to understand that Joseph dreamed two dreams. They were the same dream in both instances. Now we're going to have two dreams in chapter 40, the baker and the butler. Two dreams. Well, the butler actually meant a wine tester. So who do we remember in the Bible that was a wine tester? Do we have anybody? Who? Daniel? Well, I don't know if Daniel was a wine tester, but I think Nehemiah was a wine tester. And so he went before the king in Nehemiah 2:1, and he was a wine tester. So, and he was sad in countenance. So when he came before the king said, Why are you sad today? Because if you're going to taste my wine every day and you look sad, what do you think? Maybe you ought to take a drink of it first, because you may be putting something in my drink that's not good for me. So that's why they had wine tasters. They took a drink of the wine, and then they gave it to the king. Or if the king had any doubt, then they tasted the wine. But anyway, they were the ones that delivered the drink to the king. And that's what the butler did in this instance. So, two dreams by Joseph. Now then there's going to be two dreams by the butler and the baker. Wind's blowing my Bible around a little. So, what does that mean? Does it have any meaning? Well, Joseph, being a young man, how did God talk with him back here in 37? How did God talk with Joseph? Say again? Through a dream. Evidently through a dream, God talked with him. It's not going to be so in this chapter, but he dreamed a dream, and these things came to him. So how do we know how God talks to his people? How did he talk to Adam? How? Directly, right. Rachel said directly also, I think. So God talked to Adam face to face. Wouldn't that be something? He walked in the garden with Adam in the cool of the evening. He talked to him face to face, as a man talks to his friends. And he talked with Moses. How did he talk with Moses? As it were, face to face. We know that Moses didn't look upon his face. He got to see his hinder part, but he didn't talk to him face to face. But he did talk with God, and the Bible says that God talked with Moses as a man talks with his friends. So, if I'm talking with a friend, if Brother Dan's talking with, who's your doctor that you go see? Not the endocrinologist, but the man that we go to see up at Lebanon. Who? Yeah, Dr. Ellis. And he would share some things with him, and he'd feel comfortable and at ease with him. So That's the way Moses communicated with God. Isn't that something to think about? But Joseph evidently had a dream, dreamed 2 dreams, and now all his brethren are bound down to him, and his father, and also all those around him, the sun and the moon stars. And his father rebuked him for that dream as well, and his brother hated him so much the more. So it lets you see that the things that God's going to bring to pass and put David in a position of authority, even in a strange land. And now then, at the end of 39, he is thrown back into a bad situation again. So first of all, he gets thrown in a well, taken out and sold to the Ishmaelites. Now he's taken down into Egypt, and then he's sold to Potiphar, and Potiphar uses him for a while. Now he's 17 years old when he goes down there. He might have been a year, maybe so, older at the time of this 41st chapter, but now he's a little older at the 40th chapter. And so he has been there for a while, and now he's in prison again. So we'll find out how long he's in prison with these other people. But the other thing I wanted you to see, that Daniel has been put, or Joseph has been put in a position of authority, even in the prison. And the reason for all that was what? Why would Joseph put, Brother Cruz, why was he put in a position of authority, do you think? Because God was with him. God was blessing him. Yeah, God was blessing him in that situation. So God saw where he was at. He knew he was in prison, and God blessed him. And so he was put in authority even over these chief people who were part of Pharaoh's court. They came in the presence of Pharaoh every day, the baker and the butler. So anyway, I believe his brother Randy last week, he's not here this morning, I wanted to show him that Joseph did complain. He said Joseph never complained in all that. Well, the only time that I can see he complained too much was right here in the 15th verse of the 40th chapter. And here it says, "For indeed I was stolen away out of the land of the Hebrews, and here also have I done nothing that they should put me into the dungeon." So that sounds like a little bit of unhappiness, doesn't it, Tommy? Sounds like he's unhappy a little bit. All right. And he asked that the butler, the wine taster, that he would remember him when he came back to his position. He said, "You're going to be restored to your position. So when you are restored to that position, remember me here in this prison." Okay. Any questions or comments? This is your class, so feel free to jump in anytime you want to. All right, when the chief baker saw that the interpretation was good, he said to Joseph, "I was in a dream, and behold, I had 3 white baskets on my head." Well, first of all, go back to the butler or the wine taster. He said after 3 days, you're going to be restored to your position. So this man, the baker, was waiting. He wanted to see what kind of results that Joseph would give him. They said, "Well, that's pretty good. You know, he's going to get to go back to where he was at before, so I'm going to tell him my dream." And so he does. And he says, he said, "I saw 3 baskets on my head, and the uppermost basket were all manner of baked meats and baked goods. And Pharaoh and the birds, meats for Pharaoh, and the birds did eat them out of the basket upon my head." And Joseph answered and said, "This is the interpretation thereof. 3 baskets are 3 days." So both of these dreams had 3 days. 3 days for the butler and 3 days for the baker. "Yet within the 3 days shall Pharaoh lift up thy head from off thee, and shall hang thee on a tree, and the birds shall eat thy flesh off thee." Well, he didn't get the same result, did he? he got a bad interpretation of his dream. So, and it came to pass the third day, that which Pharaoh's birthday, and he made a feast unto his servants, and he lifted up the head of his chief butler, of the chief and of the chief baker among his servants, and he restored the chief butler to his butlership again, and he gave the cup to the Pharaoh's hand, and he hanged the chief baker as Joseph interpreted. Yet did not the chief butler remember Joseph, but forgot him. So, isn't that the truth? Sometimes when we are alleviated of a problem in our life, and we're praying to God that, that things will get better with us, and then they get better, what do we generally do, or what sometimes do we do? Go back to what we did before, and what do we forget to do? Remember. What do we need to remember? If you pray to God for a situation to come to pass, and then it comes to pass, what should we do? Thank God for it. Yeah, thank you. Eva?
You can tell other people what God done for you.
Yes, that's absolutely right. Thank God for what He's done for you. And not only that, we should let it be known that God has been with us, and that we're thankful to God that He's done those things. All right, here we are in 41. Unless there's any questions or comments on chapter 40. It's pretty straightforward course of events, but I wanted you to see that Joseph had two dreams. Now then, the butler and the baker have two dreams. Same dream, two dreams. Any questions? I don't know if you got questions. Brother Paul will answer them. So anyway, we'll start in 40. Let's see what it's got to reveal to us. And it came to pass at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh dreamed, and behold, he stood by the river. First thing I want to do is stop and tell you that 2 years. Here, Joseph is down in prison. He's interpreted these two dreams. He's been faithful to his maker. He's interpreted the dream to the baker and the butler. And they came to pass, and he said, remember me when you come into the Pharaoh's house, and get me out of this house. That's his words. Get me out of this house. Bring me out of this house. So, did that happen? No. 2 years passed. Now, God's looking at all this. So why didn't God just relieve his situation right then? Who was first? Who had a comment over here? Oh, Dan, what was it? It's what now? Tested his faith. All right. Well, yeah, I think it's a test of his faith in some instance. And then I was also thinking that one day is like what with God? How long a time? 1,000 years. And 1,000 years is what? Like a day. So time is no essence with God, because he has no beginning, he has no end. So if it's been 2 years, it's just a tick of the clock in God's eyes. Brother Terry? God's working his plan, yes. What is it in Galatians 5 and 4? God who, therefore when the fullness of time was come, God sent forth his Son, born of a woman, born under the law, that he might redeem them that were under the law. So God has a plan when the fullness of time has come. So here 2 years have passed. Pharaoh has dreamed a dream. He's got the wine taster back in his presence is bring the cup before the Pharaoh day by day, and they drink grape juice, and sometimes it was fermented wine. And behold, there came up out of the river, this is his dream, 7 well-favored kine, well-fashioned, and they fed in the meadow. There was grass along the banks of the Nile, and what does that remind you of? A very fruitful place. If you're a plant and you're growing by the side of a body of water, generally you notice that it stays nice and green all the time, and the trees stay nice and green all the time. It reminds me of the first Psalms. And he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of waters. His leaf will also not wither, and whatsoever he does, it shall what? Wither away, blow off an east wind. What will happen to the works of someone who, the analogy that it's making? He shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of waters. His leaf shall not wither, and whatsoever he doeth, it shall prosper. Can we say that's true of Joseph in this case? God is with him, so it's made him to prosper. So he's down there in prison still yet. He's been there 2 years. And now then here's another dream the Pharaoh has. He said these cattle came up out of the river. He came up out of the river, and well favored and lean fashioned, and stood on the other kind upon the bank of the river. All right, there's 12 fat cattle come up out of the river, and 12 skinny ones, and the skinny ones eat up the well favored ones, and they don't get any bigger. So this troubled him. I guess it would trouble us too if we had some kind of dream that we didn't know what in the world it meant. So, and then he dreamed a second time. I want you to see this, that he dreams a second time. So Joseph has 2 dreams. The baker and the butler have a dream. That's 2. Now Pharaoh has 2 dreams. And behold, there were 7 thin ears. Well, anyway, he slept and come up out of in verse 5, and he slept and dreamed the second time, behold, 7 ears of corn, and this is probably interpreted wheat there, but came up out upon one stalk, rank and good, and behold, then the thin ears came up, blasted by the east wind, and sprung up after them, and the 7 thin ears devoured the rank and full ears, and Pharaoh awoke, and behold, it was a dream. Kind of woke him up. So if you're from down around southeast Missouri, or if you're from Oklahoma, like some of these folks are, and you grow cotton down there. Now, back when I was a boy, we had what we call windrows, and they planted trees, and those trees were black locust. Black locust grows pretty quick. Doesn't get to be a real big tree, but it's got a plume that comes out of it in the very early spring. Kind of looks like grapes, and the fragrance that it puts off is just sensational. Smells like heaven. But you get the cotton up about 2 or 3 inches tall, and it's got a few leaves on it, and the east wind comes up. What happens, Brother Paul? What? It wilts and dries up, and if it's like it is in southeast Missouri, the wind is so strong and the sand comes up with the wind, and it'll strip that cotton clean. That little plant won't have any leaves on it at all, and of course, you know what's going to happen. It's either going to kill it or it'll be stunted severely. So anyway, it says this east wind blew on these plants, and then they ate the 7 fat ears, and they became no fatter. And so when he woke up, he wanted to know, what were these dreams all about? So at this time, they had astrologers and soothsayers and wise men that they called on to come before them to interpret things. And it came to pass in the morning, the Spirit troubled his spirit was troubled, and he sent for and called the magicians of Egypt and the wise men thereof, and Pharaoh told them the dream, and there was none that could interpret them unto Pharaoh. And he spake unto the chief butler, and then spake the chief butler unto Pharaoh, saying, I remember my faults this day. Okay, it only took him a couple of years, right? If I was one down in prison, I think that's a long time. But anyway, he said, I remember my fault right now. Pharaoh was wroth with his servants and put me in the ward, and the captain of the guard was both with me and the chief baker, and he dreamed, and we dreamed a dream in one night, I and he, and we dreamed each man according to the interpretation of the dream. And there was with us a young man, a Hebrew, a servant of the captain of the guard, and we told him the interpretation, and he interpreted our dreams. To each man according to the dream did he interpret it, and it came to pass as he interpreted to us, and it was, and so it was, and he reported unto mine office, and he restored unto mine office him he granted, hanged, and him he hanged. So in other words, he's saying, he told me I was going to be restored to my office, and the baker, he's going to be hanged. And he said, that's exactly what happened, Pharaoh. And so then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him hastily out of the dungeon, and he shaved himself and changed his raiment and came into Pharaoh. Now it was that if you were going to appear before this magistrate, Pharaoh, king of all Egypt, very prestigious position. And of course, Egypt was the ruling country of that time. And so you had to present a certain posture in order to come before Pharaoh. So here he had him shaved up. You know, I guess he had grown quite a beard. Kind of looked like a guy that had a full beard. And I was going to point out Brother Paul, but he's not here this morning. So anyway, and Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I have dreamed a dream, and there is none that can interpret it. And I have heard say thee that thou canst understand a dream and interpret it. Now listen to Joseph. And Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, it is not in me. God shall give Pharaoh the answer to the prince for an answer of peace. Now, Joseph gave God the glory in interpreting the dream of the baker and the butcher, baker and the butler. Now he gives God the glory before Pharaoh about this dream that he's about to interpret. So remember this, man can do nothing without the blessings of God. If we're about the Lord's business, if we listen to him talk to us through his word nowadays, then we can be about his business. And so he honors God before this magistrate. So Pharaoh says unto Joseph, in my dream, behold, I stood on the bank of the river, and behold, there came up out of the river 7 kine, fatted and fleshed, and well favored, and they fed it in the meadow. And behold, 7 other kine came up, poor and very ill favored, in lean fashion, such as I never saw in the land of Egypt. And the lean and the ill favored kine did eat up the first and fat kine. And when they had eaten them up, it could not be known that they had eaten them. In other words, they didn't get any fatter. And they were ill-favored at the beginning, so I woke. And I saw in my dream, and behold, 7 ears. He's dreaming the second dream now. 7 ears, behold, came up out of the one stalk, and 7 good, full and good, and behold, the 7 ears within withered, thin and blasted with the east wind sprung up with them, and the thin ears devoured the 7 good ears. And I told this to the magician and there was none that could declare it. Now, some of the interpreters or some of the commenters on the Bible say that these magicians and these wise men tried to interpret the dream, but they were afraid to give a sure interpretation of the dream. So Pharaoh was no better off. And they were afraid to do it because they didn't understand the dream. So, what do we see in this? Could they have just said, well, it's going to be, 7 days and, and the sun's going to shine before we go. It means it's going to rain pretty good on the 7th day. They could have said something like that. But God had obscured their vision. Whatever ability they had to stand before Pharaoh as wise men and magicians, God had blocked their view. They didn't have anything to say. But it was because God was going to have the one whom he was blessing in that situation to interpret this dream. All in the plan of God. And Joseph said unto Pharaoh, the dream of the Pharaoh is one. Both dreams are one, but there's two dreams. God hath showed Pharaoh what is about to do in 7 good kind or 7 years. And the 7 ears are 7 years. And the 7 thin and ill-favored kind came up out after them, and the 7 empty years, blasted by the east wind, shall be 7 years famine. So it's going to be 7 years good, 7 years of famine. And this thing which I have spoken to Pharaoh, what God is about to do, he showed unto Pharaoh. In other words, God is actually looking with favor down on Pharaoh because he's telling him what's going to happen to his kingdom. 7 years you're going to have favor of good crops. In 7 years you're going to have bad crops. And behold, there came up 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt, and there shall rise after them 7 years of famine, all that will be forgotten. So anyway, I'm going to drop on down, and here's what Joseph tells Pharaoh. Now therefore let Pharaoh look about a man of discreet and wise, and let him over the land of Egypt. For Pharaoh do this, and let him appoint officers of the land, and take up the 5th part of the land of Egypt for plenteous years, and let them gather all the food of the house of the good years, that they lay not up corn, that they lay good years, and come and lay up corn or grain under the hand of Pharaoh, and let them keep food in the cities, and the food shall be for store against the 7 years of famine, and it shall be in the land of Egypt, in the land of that shall not perish through the famine. So Pharaoh hears the interpretation of the dream, and so he likes this. I mean, this is something that's very good in his eyes. So, and the thing was good in the eyes of Pharaoh and in the eyes of his servants. And Pharaoh said unto the servants, can we find such a one as this man? In other words, we're going to exalt you because you've got the ability to interpret this dream. It's evident that God's with you. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, for as much as God hath showed unto thee all, there is none so discreet and wise as thou, and thou shalt shall be over my house. According to the word shall my people be ruled. Only in the throne will I be greater than thou. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, see, I have set thee over the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh took off his signet ring off of his hand, and put it on Joseph's hand, and arrayed him in vestures of linen, and put a gold chain about his neck. Well, I didn't have a gold chain to put on this morning. Steve, I think, maybe got one, but I hadn't got one. But anyway, Pharaoh decks him out. He puts a chain on his neck, puts a ring on his finger, and puts some fine clothes on him. So he wants everybody to know what. What does this do? What does the ring and the cloak indicate? What is it? Who has authority? And so, where do we see that in the New Testament? Anybody? Luke, what is it, 15th chapter, 14th chapter, somewhere in there, about the 15th verse. The prodigal son comes back. What does he say, Dan? Bring forth a cloak to put on him, put a ring on his finger. Why did he do that? Shows that he was a son and he was in authority. So, I don't wear this very often. I bought this ring when I had to achieve something, a goal that I set for myself, and so it was a symbol for me. So it was as it was then. It's a symbol to show that Joseph is the one that is in authority, and he said, "You're second only in the kingdom to me." Takes off his own ring and puts it on his finger. And he says, "You take care of this matter." And he set people under Joseph to watch over the land, years of plenty, so that there would be corn, or not corn, but grain in the storehouses of Pharaoh to feed all the nations of the world. Now, got a couple quotes here. We're about to run out of time. Life without experience and suffering is not life. Socrates. Let me read that again. Life without experience and suffering is not life. Have you experienced any hardship in your life? I know that you have. Brother Cruz has shared a few things with me, and I've had some difficult times in my life. I know that Brother Terry has, and Connie has, and others have. But Socrates says life without experience and suffering is not life. That's life. Joseph is experiencing some of those things of God. But as Randy pointed out, he doesn't charge God for those things, but he does complain a little bit, not much, just a little. Said, "Remember me when you get back to your place." And when he didn't, he said, I've done nothing to get put where I'm at now. But now God is about to elevate him to what he intended in those 2 years that put in prison. Now, Joseph was 17 when he got down there. How old is he now? He's 30 years old. How long has that been since he's been in Egypt? 17, 18, 19, 20. If he was 17 when he got there, that's 3. And that would be 20. And then 10, he'd been there for what? 13 years. Is that right? My math right? 13 years. And he had not blamed God in all that time. One other quote. Ladies, listen up. Life is either a herring adventure. Life is either a herring adventure or nothing. Now, who said that, ladies? Helen Keller. You know who Helen Keller was? She was a lady that was born blind and deaf. And yet she rose to do, she was a writer, and she lectured. She was very outstanding. If you're ever in Tuscumbia, Alabama, stop by there and see the home of Helen Keller and read that story. Well, I won't get on to the rest of the chapter. That's pretty much the chapter. They had 7 years of drought. The Pharaoh gives him, I want to make mention of this if we got time. He gives him the daughter, Asenath, Anatharath. She was the daughter of this man, almost had the same name as the man that he worked for when he first came down there. But anyways, he gave her to wife, the daughter of Potipharah, Potipharah, priest of On. And I will just tell you this, that this was the headquarters of the god of the Egyptians, that was the sun god. Okay. So anyway, we're going to see that this woman that gave Joseph 2 sons while he was in Egypt is going to be, she's going to influence them to the point that it's going to cause Israel to do some bad things later on in the history of God's people. But I wanted you to notice that he gave him this pagan priest's daughter to wife, and she gives him 2 sons. So well, Brother Paul, I guess, be back with us next week. And later on, before the chapter's over, we might make mention of these, of what they caused Israel to do. Any questions? I've done most of the talking, but you've been very attentive. Thank you very much.